Hey everyone, Fabiano Caruana here, and we're going to be looking at 10 chess openings in 10 minutes. Let's go. Okay, opening number 1, the Italian game. It starts after white plays e4, black copies with e5, then you attack the pawn on e5, black defends it very logically, and here there's a big choice, but the Italian game starts with bishop to c4, developing the bishop on a open diagonal. This is also called gioco piano for quiet game or slow game, and it's one of the oldest openings in chess. It goes back hundreds of years. It's also probably the most popular opening at the highest levels these days. And the reason for that is because it takes the game into territory where it's a slower pace, so you don't run into any potential like big tactics or really forcing lines. You're just going for a strategic fight, and you can try to outplay your opponent over a long game. It's for the player who is very confident in their strategic ability and wants to learn also about positional play. And it's one of my favorite openings. It's the opening that I chose to try to beat my opponents in the last Candidates tournament in 2024. I do highly recommend it. Opening number 2, the Sicilian Defense. The Sicilian Defense starts after e4 and c5. So it already starts on the first move, and black is the one who initiates it by playing c5, which breaks the symmetry in the center. Rather than copying white's first move with e5, black is going for an asymmetrical position, and this is a starting point for many of the largest and most popular opening systems in chess, including opening systems like the Najdorf variation, like the Dragon variation, openings that were championed by players like Garry Kasparov and Bobby Fischer. Traditionally, it's known as a way to get a big fight by kind of breaking the symmetry and destabilizing the position. You're aiming to challenge white in a more direct way rather than trying to copy white's moves. So here you're going for a really sharp fight, and that's why it was always known as the weapon of the most fighting players in chess history. You might want to play the Sicilian Defense because it is the best fighting option against the first move e4. Although it is very fighting, it also is a very high quality opening. So you're not undermining your position to try to get a fight. You are keeping a good quality position and also trying to aim for the maximum possible result against your opponent. Opening number 3, the Ruy-Lopez variation. The Ruy-Lopez starts after white plays e4, black copies white's first move, knight to f3 attacking the pawn, black defends the pawn, and here white continues putting pressure on the center in the most direct way with bishop to b5. This introduces the Ruy-Lopez variation, also known as the Spanish game. It was introduced by Ruy-Lopez de Segura. This is going back to the 1500s, arguably the oldest opening in chess, and also the one that was probably the battleground for the biggest chess fights of the 20th century. Notably, matches like Kasparov versus Karpov in the 1980s featured dozens of games starting from this position and with theory extending into move 15, 20, and beyond. So this is the most direct way that white tries to challenge the center, tries to put pressure on black, and tries to force black into an uncomfortable position. You might want to play the Ruy-Lopez variation if you're looking to put immediate pressure on your opponent, attacking their knight and attacking their center from the earliest possible moment, and if also you want to learn from the great players of the past, many world champions who chose this opening even in the world championship matches that they played. Opening number 4, the Caro-Kann variation. The Caro-Kann is another opening that black chooses, which starts from the very first move. After white plays e4, black plays c6. It looks a little bit less aggressive than openings like the Sicilian variation because black is only advancing the pawn 1 square, but it has a very clear goal, which is to control the center by playing d5 next move, regardless of what white plays. And after white captures, if white chooses to, black will be able to capture back with the c-pawn. So this is a standard way of trying to prepare for controlling the center, c6 and d5. It's very similar in some ways to the French variation, which has the same idea after e6 and d5, but keeps the bishop's line open, so that black, if they choose to, can develop the bishop along that diagonal later on. This is a very solid variation, which does stay flexible and has a good theoretical reputation. It isn't the most popular at the top level these days, but does remain one of the most popular openings and one of those most solid openings that black can choose against e4. You might want to play the Caro-Kann opening if you like to build a stable black center and you are looking for a slightly slower, more methodical fight compared to openings like the Sicilian Defense or even e4, e5. Here you're just building up your center, not really concerning yourself too much with what white is doing at the start, and it remains one of the most solid and stable openings from black's point of view. Opening number 5, the French defense. The French defense starts again on move 1. After white plays e4, black plays e6, which has a very similar idea to the Caro-Kann variation. Black is trying to play d5 next move, supporting the pawn so that if white captures, black can recapture with the pawn and keep central control. This is stylistically quite similar to the Caro-Kann variation, but it does differ mostly in terms of the development of this light squared bishop, which usually stays a little bit less active because the pawn on e6 does obstruct its development somewhat, and it is considered the main downside of the opening, that you potentially have a passive light square bishop. However, I would say that this is still one of the most popular, and these days one of the theoretically best openings, even up to the top level, and has seen a resurgence of interest. For example, in the last Candidates tournament, which is pretty much the highest level tournament that exists, it was chosen by players like Pragnananta and other players in the tournament who were trying to find a solid but still fighting variation to choose against e4. You might want to play the French defense if you're looking for a solid opening where you build up your center and have a more slow-paced fight, but also have chances to counterattack in the later middle game. Opening number 6, the King's Indian Defense. The King's Indian Defense is an opening that black chooses after white's starting move d4, and although it is also a direct opening, it is in some ways considered even a system of development. It starts after knight f6, white plays c4 to try to build a center, g6, knight to c3, so white is trying to build a full 3-pawn center, but black ignores it with bishop g7, lets white take full control of the center, and then plays d6. And this is the starting position for the King's Indian Defense, but it's such an iconic opening in some ways that it's also considered a system of development. So regardless of what white does, very often black can just choose this mode of development, kind of ignoring what white is doing, and just taking care of their own piece placement, and later trying to counterattack in the center. So very commonly, black will try to castle quickly, so black has been able to develop all the pieces on the king side, achieved a nice fianchetto, and castled, and then only later will attack white center from the flank, from the fianchettoed bishop, playing either e5 or c5. It was one of the openings championed by Bobby Fischer and Garry Kasparov in the past. I think that this opening is ideal for players, especially at the club level, who can learn it well and will be able to outplay their opponent because they know the subtleties better. Opening number 7, the Nimzo-Indian Defense. The Nimzo-Indian is an opening that black chooses after white's first move d4. Black plays knight to f6, white plays c4. This is very standard to try to create a center, following up with knight c3 and e4, and here black challenges that center, first by playing e6, which is a common way to prepare d5, but also shows another idea. After knight to c3, black has opened the bishop's development and plays bishop to b4. And this is considered a modern opening because black is not trying to control the center with pawns by playing d5, but controls the center with pieces. So white is not able to play e4 because after knight takes e4, white's knight is pinned to the king, so white cannot capture back. And this means that white would lose a pawn, and therefore is not able to build up the center with e4 anymore. So white commonly tries to build up the center again with pieces, such as queen to c2 or f3 followed by e4, but black can also counterattack that in different ways. So this is a very modern opening and one of the best regarded in current opening theory. You might like the Nimzo-Indian if you're looking for a way to attack the center with your pieces. You're looking for a lot of flexibility, especially in which way that you build your center up with your pawns, whether you want to play with the traditional d5 setup or later with b6 and fianchettoing and trying to control the center with both bishops. And also, if you prefer knights to bishops, this might be an opening for you. Opening number 8, the Grünfeld Defense. The Grünfeld Defense is an opening that black chooses after white's first move d4. It has some similarities in some ways to the King's Indian Defense, but does differ in a very fundamental way early on. Black plays knight to f6, a common way of developing the knight. c4, white tries to build up the center. g6, so in this way it's similar to the King's Indian because black is fianchettoing the bishop. But after knight to c3, rather than allowing white to build up the center in a classical way with e4, for example bishop g7, the King's Indian Defense, black plays d5, and this is a starting point for the Grünfeld variation. So black is preventing white from playing e4, and after white captures the pawn, which is very logical, black is able to capture it back, therefore not losing a pawn. And although white can build up a center, black is able to, in some ways, corrupt white's structure by threatening to take on c3. And after white takes back, white's pawn islands and the a-pawn being isolated. That's kind of the strategic idea behind the Grünfeld. It is one of the openings that, again, was championed by Garry Kasparov and Bobby Fischer and has a very rich history, especially in World Championship matches. You might like the Grünfeld defense if you want to approach the opening in a very analytical, concrete, and sharp way, and you're looking for a sharp fight full of calculation. Opening number 9, the English opening. The English opening starts on move 1. White chooses the move c4. This move does contain a lot of similarities and also transpositions to potential openings if white had started with d4, and does contain the same ideas to build the center with c4, d4, and only after e4. However, it is also a little bit different and does offer black some different opportunities on move 1, such as the reverse Sicilian, the symmetrical English, and some other independent variations. I consider it a very flexible opening. Players who like to play slow positional games, this is definitely suited for them. And it leads to a slightly more strategic and slow-paced fight compared to openings, for example, after first move e4. This has been an opening that has been a favorite of, for example, world champion Vladimir Kramnik. I also enjoy playing it myself when I try to feel like getting a more fighting game sometimes and a more slow-paced game against my opponents. It is personally one of my favorite openings. You might like the English opening if you're looking for something very flexible, very positional, and also with a lot of small strategic subtleties, and you enjoy that sort of approach of looking for small improvements in the opening, small advantages, and you enjoy very long fights, then the English opening could be for you. Opening number 10, the Scandinavian Defense. The Scandinavian Defense starts after e4, and black immediately takes control of the center with d5, or in some ways challenges white's center. And after white takes back the pawn, which is the most logical and best move, black develops a queen, which makes it a very unique opening because the queen is developed very early on. It goes slightly contrary to traditional chess principles. You're usually not supposed to develop your queen very early because, for example, it gets attacked, and then you keep losing more time because you can't afford to sacrifice your queen. It's the most powerful piece on the board, and then you have to keep moving it over and over, which doesn't sound like a very good case for the opening, and to be honest, it isn't a very good opening. Some people like it. I don't. I've never played it. I don't really recommend it, but you can play it if you want. Well, there you go. That was 10 openings in 10 minutes. I hope you found this video helpful and that you'll find it useful in your own games. If you want to see more videos like this, let us know in the comments. I'll see you next time.